The story opens with the narrator, a space marine survivor, introducing himself in a deteriorating tone, revealing that he is the last of his company. He speaks as if composing a final log, laced with guilt and doubt. He alludes to a mission that ended in catastrophic failure, though details are hazy and his memory is unreliable. From the beginning, there are hints of trauma, time distortion, and the strange sense that something mechanical is remembered or recorded, what should not be remembered. The mission begins with planetfall on a dead forge world Tenebris Vi buried, under ash storms and tectonic collapse. The narrator's squad, composed of tactical marines, a techmarine, an apothecary, and a librarian, is tasked with retrieving lost Mechanicus data, possibly even an STC. The surface is silent, the Vox yields only static, and no biological life is detected. Yet things begin to feel wrong. Time passes inconsistently, and the ruins seem aware of their presence. They find dead servitors moving without power and architecture that shifts when UNOBSERVED dot as they descend into the manufactorum. They find signs of ancient battles, ossified remains still in power armor, altar impacts from centuries past. Rooms lead nowhere or loop on themselves. A marine vanishes in a hallway that shouldn't exist. At the core of the forge, they interface with a cogitator which responds with strange data and whispers mentions of a concept called the engine memory. The techmarine is disturbed. The librarian prays more frequently. The squad begins to unravel. Strange constructs with non-standard design stalk them, not attacking but observing. One marine begins to mutter machine phrases he shouldn't know. The techmarine claims the forge knows us. Environmental readings go haywire. The librarian experiences a psychic seizure, shouting the word remembrance before collapsing. The forge is not dead. It's waiting. More losses follow. The squad is halved. Some marines fuse into their armor as if claimed by the forge itself. They find a chamber where engines pulse with wired human hearts. Old Mechanicus logs suggest they tried to contact or awaken something older than the Omnissiah. Memory fractures worsen. The apothecary cannot extract gene seed. It has turned black and alien. The narrator no longer trusts his own recollections. Eventually, the forge fully awakens. Doors lock. The red light bathes every corridor. The sound of vast gears turning echoes through the walls. Dead marines speak through the Vox. The librarian attempts a psychic purge, but the result is catastrophic bodies rearranged into symbols, minds vaporized. The narrator blacks out, and when he wakes, blood covers his armor. The Vox replay reveals a voice speaking from within. We remember. Alone, he descends to the core, where he finds the memory engine and altar of bone and data, servo skulls chattering in binary hymns. Here, he sees what the forge recorded, not just this mission, but fragments of a forgotten atrocity, possibly one committed by his chapter. Sins erased by history, but preserved by the machine. The forge has no malice. It simply remembers. That is its function. The narrator reflects in final horror. Perhaps he never survived. Perhaps he is only a memory, a playback from a corrupted data core. He transmits this log via an emergency astropathic relay, unsure if it will reach anyone. He speaks of loss, guilt, and the terrible irony that the Omnissiah's tools were listening all along. As his voice fades, he warns, the engines do not forgive. They remember. The story ends on a cold, lingering note, an echo of a final line, such as, "Do not answer when the machines call your name," or, "The forge is not asleep. It dreams in data, and it dreams of us." Our orders were clear, even if the motive behind them was not. We were to make planetfall on Tenebris Vi, a long-dead forge world buried deep within the Noctis Aeterna's forgotten borders, just beyond the halo of reliable astropathic reach. The transmission that brought us here was fragmented and likely ancient, layered in archaic Binhuric code only our Technorain could decipher. But the cadence was unmistakable, a distress call or perhaps a recall order. The Mechanicus demanded, "Silence be answered." As ever, we obeyed. We were the third company of the Iron Hounds, a fleet-based successor chapter born of the Iron Hand's shattered lineage, though we no longer bore their heraldry in full. Our gene seed carried the stern legacy of Ferrus Manus resilience in the flesh, iron in the soul, but tempered by centuries of independent action and isolation. We prided ourselves not in mechanical augmentation alone, but in the absolute. Loyalty to efficiency, silence, and extermination. We were ghosts of steel in the void, bred for rapid drop purge tactics against xenos infestations and heretical enclaves. No glory, no honor rolls, only completion, only silence. The captain, Varian Thal, led our deployment personally. He had served since the pale blight of Cartha Prime, and his augmetic eye still bore the sigil scars of the Nocturne Schism. Our apothecary Several was silent and clinical as ever he had extracted gene seed from over 100 fallen brothers, each one recorded in his obsidian tabula. Techmarine Hastrion spoke little to us, more often muttering in corrupted Binaric to his own mechadendrites. And our librarian, Marnax, had grown distant of late, his dreams plagued by whispered coordinates and voices in the dark. Still, he swore the Emperor's light was with him. Even here, the descent to Tenebris Vi was uneventful in the physical sense. Our Thunderhawk breached the ash-layered atmosphere, which peeled away like the skin of a dead thing. The upper stratosphere was choked with orbital detritus remains of an ancient void battle, fragments of defense monitors, shattered Mechanicus cargo vessels. But no beacon, no responding Vox, no light on the surface, save for the weak ambient glow of tectonic rift fires lancing up from deep below. Even from orbit, we could see that the planet was broken, not dead broken. Something vast had moved. Here, something had carved the mountains as if with claws. We touched down on the remains of an orbital tether junction, now half buried in layers of basalt ash and frozen soot. The forge city below, once the beating heart of this world's production, was a tomb. Vox channels returned only static, with occasional bursts of rhythmic clicking, like fingers drumming on steel. The temperature shifted erratically. Atmospheric readouts were inconsistent, at times breathable, at times poison. The environment defied logic. Winds that carried no dust, gravity that pulsed like breath. We deployed regardless, the first. Deployment squad spread out to secure a perimeter around the descent platform. We followed standard breach protocol. Auspex sweeps, motion dampeners engaged, targeting routines running in parallel with machine spirit diagnostics. We were trained for this, for warp-touched zones, for echo halls and wailing crypts. Still, Tenebris Vi felt. Aware. The forged structures rose around us, like the ribs of a dead Colossus Angular, sharp, half consumed by collapse and yet untouched by time. Engraved prayers to the Omnissiah were still visible on oxidized steel. Inscriptions in binary were etched across tower facades, but the lettering was wrong, as if written in reverse. Several of us noticed this, but no one spoke of it. We had learned long ago the dangers of observation without purpose. We moved in. Calculated intervals, leapfrogging between broken manufacturing spires and disused conveyor crawlers. Some of the machines were still warm. Not operational, but warm. Techmarine Hastrion logged the anomaly without comment. Marnax tightened the seals of his helm and began chanting low war supplication rites. His breath fogged within the psychic. Ward, though his internal suit temperature remained stable. Apothecary Several discovered a collapsed skittery patrol buried under meters of ferrocrete near the first access node. Their bodies were untouched by decomposition, but their visors were shattered from the inside. Their augments had continued moving for days, perhaps weeks, after death. Their power cores had all been drained simultaneously. Hastrion called it a data purge cascade. I saw his servo arm twitch before he finished the rite of disassembly. Inside the breached corridor, a static field persisted, not warp-based, according to Marnax, but something else. Something digital. The vox crackled with a voice none of us recognized. A single phrase repeated. Request, memory off. Request, memory off. Request ... We sealed the channel. Several muttered something about recursion ghosts' false signals that repeat old data from long-dead vox logs. But he didn't sound convinced. By the 4th hour, we had secured the entry route to the central core of the forge. The gates loomed tall, engraved with a symbol none of us could identify. It resembled the Omnissiah's half-skull, but distorted, elongated, with extra eyes where none should be. A false machine sigil, possibly pre-heresy, possibly older. Librarian Marnax halted briefly before it, murmuring in a tongue I had not heard before. When I turned to him, he shook his head and resumed walking. We established a forward relay at the gate's threshold. Techlering Hastrion connected his mechadendrites into the exposed data conduits. There was resistance. Static shock cascaded across his armor. He flinched. He had never flinched before. Then he smiled. The machine spirit, he said, was awake, and it was listening. We were 7 hours into the operation when the temperature dropped by 13 degrees in less than 2 seconds. Inside sealed armor, we felt it. Not as cold, but as something leaving, like a soul drawn backward through. Flesh. We paused. There was no wind, no seismic movement. Yet something had shifted. In the far distance, beyond the ridgeline, the towers of the forge began to shimmer subtly at first, as though they had never been stationary. I checked my autolog. The time code had looped back 10 minutes. My Auspex reinitialized on its own. For a moment, I thought I saw my own vitals repeated twice, once as live feed, once as archived footage. Thal ordered a partial withdrawal to test our exfiltration path. The route was gone. The corridor we had entered through had folded in on itself, becoming an atrium that none of us remembered passing. Yet it was etched with our footprints. Even our drop pod signal was no longer pinging. We weren't cut off, we were redirected. That was the moment Hastrion said the words I still remember. Though I pray I forget them, it doesn't want us to leave yet. It remembers we came. No one answered him. The forge gates closed behind us without a sound. No mechanism moved. No audible hydraulics. One moment the threshold was open to the ashen wastes. Then it was simply sealed. There was no command issued. Captain Thal ordered a full system scan, but Hastrion reported nothing. No change in pressure, no locking clamps, no magnetic field. Just a state change, as though the forge had edited its own environment. Inside, the temperature stabilized unnaturally, a consistent 19 degrees across all corridors, too perfect. The walls, once corroded and oxidized on the surface, now bore a dull, wet sheen. Deeper within, everything was still functioning at the base level: emergency lighting, air cycling, residual heat signatures, but none of it could be sourced. Every wire traced back into a deeper darkness, down shafts that read as non-existent. On Auspex scans, we were moving inside something that did not want to be seen. We followed the data trail Hastrion had parsed from the outer terminal, an echo of the original signal. It wound downward, always downward. There was no verticality in this forge that made architectural sense. Elevators took us sideways. Stairs became descents that coiled in impossible geometries. At first, we logged these errors as spatial distortions, possibly caused by warp echoes or tectonic disruption. but the calculations failed to resolve. Marnax ceased trying after his third nosebleed. His skin was pale, and his eyes no longer aligned perfectly. He began to mutter names none of us recognized. It began with the lights. They dimmed, but not in a way artificial light should. It was as if the lumens hesitated, flickering in patterns that did not resemble malfunction. Several recorded one such strobe on his helm cam. Played back in reverse, it formed a binary code. You are remembered. Then came the dreams. We do not dream, not like mortals. Our minds are reinforced by gene seed, scarred by war, and sealed by discipline. But after the second night cycle, though time had become meaningless, we began to experience fragments, ghost visions behind the eyes during waking states. Not dreams, memories that were not ours. I saw a servitor flayed open, its components rearranged into a sculpture of screaming faces. Thal claimed he had walked this forge before, though he had not. Marnax fell to his knees during a tactical planning session, whispering to someone in the walls. Apothecary Several isolated a gene flux anomaly in our squad's metabolic readouts. Our blood oxygen ratios were shifting despite stable suit pressurization. He attempted to draw samples for comparison, but the fluid from Brother Harkin's vein had changed color black, with iridescent sheen, and thicker than it should be. It writhed in the vial. Several burned the sample immediately. Harkin reported no pain. That night, Harkin walked away from the perimeter post. We found his remains 6 levels down, embedded halfway into a steel bulkhead. No signs of battle. Number. Wounds. Just fused as though the forge had reached up and taken him. His armor had become part of the wall. His eyes, still visible through the helm, were open, watching. Hastrion tried to interface with the suit's data core. The moment his mechadendrite touched the interface port, his own armor seized up. Static surged through our Vox channel. Then came a voice, not Harkin's, not anyone's. They cannot leave. They are remembered. After that, we ceased trying to retrieve the dead. Marnax grew worse. He ceased speaking Low Gothic entirely. He wrote sigils on the walls using promethium soot, then forgot doing so. He spoke of the engine, not the reactor, not the machine spirit, but the engine that remembers. We thought it metaphor. Then he tore off his helmet mid-march, claiming the pressure was fake. He collapsed. His brainwave readings surged into warp interference frequencies for 17 seconds. He rose again, quiet, unreadable, and stared at Hastrion for hours as we moved forward. He never blinked. The forge began to rewrite itself. Shifted subtly. Not all at once, but enough that you would notice that a pipe you passed once was now missing. That the door that had been red was now black. That the floor grated underfoot like teeth. The map in our Auspex grid distorted into spirals and fractals. Hastrion said nothing for hours, then declared calmly, "This place is not built for men." We encountered the first true anomaly in what appeared to be a storage vault. Containers lined the walls large enough to hold dreadnought chassis. We assumed they were inert. Then we heard motion. Soft, deliberate, mechanical movement. We prepared for engagement. Weapons, huh? The containers opened themselves without sound, without steam or servo assist. Inside were not machines, nor corpses, but statues of us rendered in raw adamantium and black ferroglass, each one sculpted with perfect anatomical detail, helm markings, armor scars, service studs, even expressions. One bore Thol's personal purity seal, inscribed with a commendation from the Martian Synod, something no one outside the company should have known. Marnax stepped forward and touched it. It screened. The Vox feed blared a deafening, multi-voiced wail. It had no source. It didn't come from the statue, but from inside us. Everyone heard something different, mothers long dead, battle cries from lost campaigns, the Emperor's voice distorted. Brother Valen discharged his bolter 3 times into the wall. When we turned, he had shot himself through the abdomen. He lived. Barely. But the wound would not clot. Several recorded that the blood refused to oxidize. It pulsed. It whispered in frequencies the Vox picked up as Beneric. Again, the message, "You are known." We began to lose time. 3-hour patrols became 10-minute blinks. We stopped being able to track each other. Motion sensors picked up movement where there was none. Sometimes the Auspex showed us standing still, even when we were running. One of us, we don't remember who, vanished for 27 minutes. When he reappeared, he was missing half his teeth and had no memory of the interim. His armor's interior was coated in lubricant oil from an unknown source. The purity seals inside his vambrace were burned clean off. We tried to rest. We shouldn't have. During the watch cycle, Brother Darenth attacked several with his combat blade, screaming that he had seen him die and that he was wearing the apothecary's face. It took 3 of us to subdue him. The captain did not execute Darenth. Instead, he isolated him in a maintenance crawl space and sealed the door. 20 minutes later, the door was gone. The wall was smooth, no joint, no seam. We never found Darenth again. By then, even Thal began to speak less. His helmet remained on constantly. His Vox became filtered, slowed, his voice stretched like a failing data log. Hastrian detached his helm and set it aside. Beneath, his face was pale, not with fear, but with awe. He said the machine was speaking to him now, directly, that he understood, that this forge was not abandoned. It never slept, he said. It never forgets. The forge began to hum, not through vibration, but in resonance. A low pulse, a frequency you could feel in the back of the skull. It filled every chamber, and when it rose, we heard the names of our dead, spoken not with reverence, but as inventory. We lost 2 more to what we now call the remembering, a feedback surge that begins with a sharp taste of copper in the mouth, followed by disassociation, and then vanishing. Not teleportation, not death, just erasure. No scream, no blood, no final Vox log, only silence. Their names were removed from our mission log without anyone accessing it. And yet we kept moving forward, because we were not just inside a place. We were inside a mind. Memory. And now it was remembering us. We have not heard from orbit in 4 standard cycles. At first, we thought it was interference ion storms, subterranean signal diffraction, a fault in the long-range Vox arrays. Standard failures, fixable. But then Hastrion accessed the emergency. Relay our last hardwired beacon to the fleet in high anchor. He opened the channel, broadcast the standard distress code, and waited. Instead of static, we received a return signal. Our own voices, played back in reverse. Every word we had spoken since entering the forge was being reflected back at us, distorted, delayed, layered with echoes we never said. Someone or something was listening, recording, replaying. When we switched channels, the same occurred. When we shut off Vox entirely, it bled through the environment, a soft whisper behind the hum of the walls. Memory again. The place was remembering us aloud. THOL ordered a full lockdown of extraneous comms. No more signal pings, no more uplink requests. We were alone. Fully, irrevocably. We stopped marking time. The corridors became deeper, no longer symmetrical. Angles widened and bent backward. We discovered chambers where gravity tilted wrong where. Floor plates ran up walls and stairs descended in overlapping spirals. Several of us vomited upon crossing one such threshold. Even our autosenses couldn't stabilize the orientation. We began to question whether we were above or below the surface. whether there was a surface anymore. Then came the ruins, not Mechanicus. Not human. Impossible vaults, shaped in curves no tool we knew could have carved. Green-black alloy, humming faintly even when unpowered. Etchings so fine, it looked like veins in metal, forming pictoglyphs that none of our lex mechanics could parse. They pulsed when we passed. One wall opened without touch, revealing a chamber filled with obelisks taller than titans, arranged in perfect geometric silence. No dust, no decay, just waiting. Darenth called them tombs. Then remembered Darenth was gone. We should not have. Entered. The air changed, denser, oily. Our respirator filters clogged faster, even though the particulate count remained stable. The lighting no longer flickered, it swayed, like light underwater. We lost several next, not to death, to belief. He approached one of the obelisks with reverence, removed his helm, and said he could see the data beneath the stone. He reached out. His skin sloughed off his arm like peeling parchment. He didn't scream. He just said, "It's not pain. It's memory." Then he fell. When we approached, his body was gone. In its place stood another statue like the ones before. Only this one bore Several's final posture, reaching toward something we could no longer see. His name disappeared from our squad roster minutes later. His heart sigil on the apothecary. Shrine shorted out and cracked in my gauntlet. Hastrian began to speak of machina divine echoes, fragments of sentient code not written, but grown. He believed the ruins were not just xenos, but active. A kind of intelligence embedded in material, remembering purpose, awaiting trigger phrases or psychic resonance. His tone had shifted from fearful to devout. He claimed the forge was learning from us, mimicking, building something. And then came the tremors. At first, soft vibrations underfoot. Then full structural groans deeper than any tectonic activity. Not seismic, but mechanical. Something below us was waking. Or moving. We lost two more. Brothers burned by heat that came from nowhere. Their ceramite ruptured not by explosion, but reformation. The armor melted inward, as though reabsorbed into the forge's infrastructure. It was then that we first saw them. Not Necrons, not exactly. They had the metallic sheen, the silent step, the eyes like green stars. But they were wrong. Taller, less mechanical. Their limbs flowed like quicksilver, joints without hinges, torsos that shifted size depending on the Jolmi. Angle. They were not constructs. They were echoes, somehow organic impressions of long-dead machines. And they walked like they knew us. Thol engaged the first. Bolter rounds passed through it, but not cleanly. The impacts slowed, decayed, aged mid-flight. When Marnek struck one with his chainsword, the weapon corroded on contact, turning to rusted slag in his hand. These things accelerated entropy. They were entropy made manifest. We fought like cornered beasts. One of them turned and placed a hand on the wall. The entire chamber shuddered, then reformed behind us, blocking retreat. A machine command gesture, executed through no visible interface. The forge obeyed it. Thal shouted a retreat, but there was no path. Only descent. We moved down, deeper still. We lost track of the structure's purpose. No more manufactoria. No more reactors or cogitator banks. Just vast halls like cathedrals, filled with humming light and flowing data ink. The air itself carried messages. At one point, Hastrian lifted his servo arm to adjust a loose cable, and the cable moved away like it knew. He fell to his knees and began reciting litanies, not from the Codex Mechanicus, but from somewhere else. The engine that remembers does not sleep. It does not hunger. It recalls. By then, the casualties were no longer dying with dignity. Brother Ral's legs twisted backward as he screamed prayers to the Emperor, then shouted warnings in Necron binary. His armor cracked open like an egg. Nothing inside but dust. Fresh dust. We found a mural in one of the chambers, etched directly into the living metal. It showed men like us. Not just Marines, our chapter. Sigils, armor types, even a specific battle standard we had carried during the Hollow Stars Crusade. Millennia ago. It should not have been possible. These were recent additions. Hastrion said the mural updated in real time. As we stared, another figure appeared tall, with his helm removed, screaming upward. We began to doubt ourselves. Each other. We kept triple watching the watch. Even as I looked at Marnax beside me, I questioned whether he was Marnax. When I asked his service number, he answered, but the cadence was wrong. The voice slightly too perfect. Too calm, Dot, I haven't spoken to him since Dot, and then the forge itself spoke Dot, no vox. No vox at all, just a deep resonance. Not heard but felt. Every tooth in our skulls vibrated in sequence. The message was not in words. It was in recognition. Dot. We had been catalogued. Dot indexed. Dot remembered. Dot TO. Fell to his knees and removed his helm. There were no eyes beneath. Only empty sockets and something flickering behind them. Green, cold, hungry. He looked at us and said, "We are the last, but not the first." He raised his plasma pistol and destroyed his own chestplate. The plasma caught the inside of his armor and burned outward. It melted not just his body, but the entire corner of the corridor wall. The forge screamed again, not in pain, but in recalculation. A low chime echoed through the floor like a correction. That was the last time we used our weapons. Mar Nax is not with me now. He said he had to go deeper, to show them something. I did not follow. I do not know how long I have been in this chamber. There are no doors here. No ceiling. Only a sphere of black metal, floating silently, pulsing with memory light. It speaks to me in images, not of the past, but of possibilities. A world where the forge becomes more than forge, a god brain built on death and data. A machine that feeds on remembrance. And we are the fuel. The engine does not kill. It converts. It absorbs, mimics, archives. And it has begun to reshape me. I feel it in my bones. My blood pulses in harmonic sequence. My thoughts are not always mine, but I remember, and that is all it needs. The Psyker was the first to break. Lexicanum, Orith Vel, Codicil of the Librarius, Steel of Mind, bound in triple-layered psychometric null wards. I had seen him silence demons on the black moons of pallid rain. I had watched him tear-warp shadows apart with the sheer force of his will. And now, I watched him whisper to a wall for 5 hours. The chamber we found him in had no obvious architecture, just flat metallic surfaces that rippled faintly with our presence. He sat cross-legged, helm removed, fingers curled into the floor. Like roots. His mouth moved in silence until we approached, and then he turned. His eyes were not his own. Burning emerald slits, like cracked necronite, pulsed behind his sockets. But he wept as he spoke. Wept and laughed. "I can hear the song now," he murmured. "It's older than the warp, older than the bones of Mars. It's singing the death of gods." He pointed one gaunted hand toward a curved panel of the wall. "They didn't build it. They found it." Thazine tried to restrain him. The Psyker screamed, not a human sound. A data burst. High-frequency vox pulse in the range of Mechanicus machine chant. Our suit sensors sparked, overloaded. My auspex cracked down the middle. Orith's flesh began to desynchronize, blurring, vibrating, displacing microseconds ahead of reality. And then he vanished, not teleported, not killed. Simply not there. We never saw him again. That was the threshold moment. The point of no return. After that, We began to see the apparitions dotted first, fleeting, flashes in peripheral vision. Helmet HUDs registering outlines where no bodies stood. Signatures not from the warp, not even psionic, but quantum-stamped echoes, recorded memories of motion. Old boots, torn robes, power armor silhouettes walking loops across the same corridor, again and again. They bled green starlight as they walked. Not ghosts. Not quite. Hastrung called them residual mechanoghosts. Echoes stored by the forge, replayed endlessly for reasons we couldn't comprehend. But then they looked at us. One wearing the sigil of the Iron Hands, dated M36, stopped. Mid-step, turned, and locked eyes with Marnax. A screen dry, electric punched through our vox links. Marnax fell and convulsed. His armor swelled outward, then shrank like wet cloth drying on bone. He awoke 30 seconds later, eyes wide. He said, "That was me. That was me next cycle." We stopped sleeping. The apothecary rationed stims until his Medicaid console began, repeating gibberish symbols in Necron syntax. He tried to cut out the connection. It didn't work. The machine bled green fluid onto his gauntlet. Dassing shot him, point blank in the chest. We didn't argue. We dragged the body into an access shaft and sealed it behind us. Morale fractured after that. We splintered without formal command thaw. Gone, several encased in statue form. Orith lost in. Whatever the forge had turned him into, there was no hierarchy anymore. Just instinct, ritual, trauma. We clung to the Emperor's name like a drowning man clutches. A sinking rock dot, and then we found the vault dot. It was buried beneath the central core deeper than even the forge's known blueprints extended. A spherical chamber with no gravity, no heat. Signature. In the center, a suspended stasis field, flickering as if time itself couldn't hold it still. Within it, something moved. Not a being. Not in the way we think of them. A shape that changed as we looked at it. Sometimes winged, sometimes crystalline, sometimes a lattice of shifting black holes. Always wrong. Always beautiful. It pulsed not with light, but with intent. And it saw. US. I do not mean that it registered our presence. I mean it knew us, more intimately than we knew ourselves. My mind convulsed with memory my first kill on Garvax V, the prayer I whispered before entering the ranks, a sensation of my mother's. Death things I had buried even beyond the gene seed's reach. It is the archivist, Hastrian said. Not a god, not a machine, a remembrance made real. He was smiling. It was then we heard the chant, not from mouths, from the walls, from the iron, from the bones of the forge itself. A mechanical litany, chanted in binary and echoed in high. Gothic, words long forgotten. I was before flesh. I will be after flame. I remember all that burns, all that prays, all that bleeds. I am the engine. Marnax tried to destroy the vault. He triggered his melta-charge's standard procedure. The detonation should have atomized everything in a 300-meter radius. Instead, we watched the explosion freeze. Literally hang in air, a molten blossom held mid-bloom, and then reverse. The chamber rewound itself. Melted ceramite plates reformed. Shrapnel reassembled. The blast unhappened. The forge had learned from us. And now it could undo us. The warp echoes increased. Rooms we had passed through days ago were now filled with ancient marines, frozen mid-scream. We found ourselves repeating conversations word for word, without remembering them. Time distorted. Once we crossed a hall and arrived before we had entered it. One brother Carnes looked at his chronos, only to find the date was 5,000 years in the future. He stopped responding soon after. Eventually, his armor fell apart in silence, as if retired from existence. Paranoia bloomed like a cancer. We distrusted. Our own shadows. We found a corpse face down in a maintenance bay wearing Marnax's armor. Marnax stood next to it, unmoving. When I asked him to explain, he whispered, I think I tried to warn myself. We sealed the bay and never opened it again. We no longer knew how many of us remained. 2, 5, 1? Hastrian stopped speaking. He simply stared at the walls, writing symbols into the metal with his own blood. He bled constantly, without end. I watched one of his eyes slowly replace itself with a green crystal, fractal in shape, pulsing like a lens focusing on something far away. No one trusted him anymore. But no one stopped him. The deeper truth came slowly. Not in words, not even visions, just a realization. Rising like bile in the back of the mind. This place was not a tomb. That it was a recording, not written. Lived. Every death, every scream, every prayer and bullet and sorrow dash archived. Fed into the vault. The entity, whatever it was, did not kill. It collected. Memory was its medium. War was its fuel. Even time was not immune. It could compress 1,000 years into a scream, or stretch a heartbeat across millennia. Each of US was a story being read, rewritten, replicated. We were data in its cathedral. The mission was never to recover anything. We were not sent here to win. We were sent here to be remembered. I understood. Then, there had never been a fleet in orbit. We had arrived via Teleportarium Standard Mechanicus Protocol for high-risk vault insertion, and we had assumed we would signal for extraction when finished. But what if that signal never existed? What if there had never been anyone listening? What if the Imperium had fed us to the memory on purpose? A sacrifice, a test, a blind hope that if the engine could be fed a company of Astartes, it might fall asleep again, or turn its gaze elsewhere. But it is not asleep. It is watching, listening. Even now, I feel it indexing my thoughts, my fears. It doesn't need to touch me. I speak aloud, and it remembers. I bleed, and it catalogs. I think of home, and it builds it in simulation. And it has begun to speak to me, now. In dreams, in echoes, in moments between breath and blink. It promises I will not die. Because it needs me alive. To remember. The vault opened when I spoke my name, not aloud within. The realization unfolded like rusted gears grinding into motion. A door had always existed in the far wall, but only when I recalled my own name, not my battle designation, not my sigil, not even the genetic lineage of my gene seed, but the true name, the one my mother whispered before she died, long before I took the vows of the chapter. The engine had been searching for that name. The door dissolved without noise. Beyond it was not space. It was memory. A hall built of my own recollection childhood streets of Kale Sanctum. The training barracks under Hive Sanctus Prime. The shattered chapel where I buried Brother Deacon Melchior after the Shirathi incursion. But all of it wrong. Too vivid. Too clean. There was no dust, no decay, no weight. Each footstep echoed like a cathedral bell, tolling judgment. I walked alone. Thessine was gone. No blood, no marks, just gone. Hastrion had ceased being Hastrion. I'd found him kneeling at the base of the stasis core, whispering the Mechanicus canticles in reverse. His voice had taken on modulation layered, as if several versions of himself spoke in synchrony. His flesh shifted under his armor like water under glass. He didn't move when I called to him, only raised one trembling hand and said, "We are part of it now. The engine remembers us." He placed a data spike into his own neck and convulsed, his brain matter sparking against internal systems. He chanted something as he burned. I was meant to serve. I was meant to serve. I was meant to serve. His body didn't fall. It melted, digitized, streamed into the floor in strands of green circuitry. Absorbed dot. I do not know if it was death or ascension dot at first. I believed I was immune. That some quirk of will or failure in their programming left me protected. That was pride. The engine was merely waiting. The confrontation did not come as a battle. It came as a question. Inside that chamber walls alive with impossible geometry, shifting like thought, the entity took form, not physical. Never physical. It wore no single shape. It manifested through reflections, through flickering shadows of people I knew, voices I trusted. First, Orith, his eyes burning, whispering scripture. Then Thassin, grinning, a child's voice behind his teeth. Then myself, standing opposite me, staring. It asked, in my voice, "What are you, if not your memories?" I said nothing. It showed me scenes, burning planets, victories, deaths, the glorious sacrifices of our chapter. All real, all remembered, but out of sequence, fractured. In some, I was the hero. In others, the traitor. In one, I watched myself execute my brothers while chanting praises to the ruinous powers. Falsehoods? No. Possibilities. The engine was generating. Identity permutations, testing which memories I would cling to, which ones I would reject. When I denied one, when I shouted, "That never happened," I felt my own memories shudder, as if doubt had introduced corrosion. And then it started rewriting. I remembered killing Thassin, even though I hadn't. I remembered serving the entity offering data, watching the vault grow. I remembered becoming it. I fought these memories with every scrap of will left in me, reciting the canticles of purity, the catechisms of hate, the litanies of identity. I carved the aquila into my palm with my knife. I burned the name of my chapter into the wall with a plasma torch. But the engine fed on defiance. Every denial became data. Every resistance became a pattern to learn. I watched the Scion's final moments again, but this time from his perspective. I felt his fear, his loss, his begging prayer. And when he died, I felt him continue. Not into the warp, not into oblivion. But into the memory. The engine absorbed souls through recollection. Not devouring, not destroying recording. But in the act of being recorded, we changed. Like a voice distorted by endless playback. Like flesh copied too many times, imperfectly. Rewritten. One by one, I watched them go. Marnax's final scream became a vox loop that haunted every corridor. Hastion's last transmission replayed over every machine spirit in the forge. Even Orith, lost in time, flickered through the corridors like an echo with no origin. And I remained, but not unchanged. The warp began to peel at my senses. At night, if such a word still had meaning, I heard the engine breathing, not in air, in thought. Its lungs were memory. Its pulse was trauma. I removed my helm after 36 hours of silence. I saw my reflection in the vault's obsidian wall. My eyes glowed green. I do not recall when that began. My hand moved to record this message of its own accord. My words, dictated not only by thought, but by ritual. I have to speak them, because someone must remember. Because the engine requires it. I now believe it is not a god. It is not even a machine. It is a scar. A wound in time and space, where memory itself has curdled into sentience. The Dan may have fed on stars. Chaos feeds on emotion. This thing? It feeds on remembrance. It waits for the galaxy to forget it, and then it whispers its name into the hearts of the curious. It is the death of truth through over-documentation. It is history without meaning. Identity without origin. It is still growing. Still watching. I remain only because I have not finished being written. I cannot die until the engine understands me. And so I run. Not to escape, but to give it more pages. And it watches. Every step. Every breath. Every fractured thought is another brick in its cathedral. I saw it fully only once, when I passed through the final chamber, deep beneath the forge's core. A sphere of burning thought. Not matter, not code, but raw intellect, caged in memory. Latticework. Around it, icons of forgotten species bowed in digital prayer. An entire civilization's extinction rendered as a sound wave, looping in mournful cadence. And then it spoke not aloud, but through everything. You are what I remember. And I remember what you are. I dropped my bolter. My armor cracked at the joints. My gene seed pulsed black against my chest, as if trying to escape my flesh. Still, I lived. I am the last, and I do not know if that makes me lucky or unfinished. I crawl now through a ruin made of thoughts. I pass walls that whisper things I do not want to remember. I feel the engine watching through me, recording not just my life, but your listening. Because if you hear this, if these words reach your ears, it has already begun writing you too. I do not know how long it has been. Time collapses here, folds like a scroll left too long in the acid winds. I have no chronometer, no frame of reference. The planet's sun has ceased its arc. It hangs low and dull in the sky, as if ashamed to bear witness. I believe the mission is over, though I cannot say what was accomplished. No signal was ever transmitted, no enemy defeated. The Codex has no protocol for this outcome. The oaths I took feel hollow now, echoes uttered in ignorance, believing our enemies would have form, name, purpose. This thing has no purpose but continuation. It doesn't hate us. It doesn't kill. It records. And in so doing, it rewrites. I remember the final voice I heard before the silence. It was from the apothecary, years ago, long before Arkenhold Hive. He once told me that gene seed degradation wasn't merely a flaw of biology, but a memory issue. The organ forgets what it's meant to be, he said. Corruption is the loss of purpose, of pattern. That is what has happened to me. The engine did not possess me, that it reminded me too much. Too often. It flooded my mind with every version of myself that could have been, every alternate failure, every betrayal never committed but conceived. I carry within me now the entire data tree of my potential. The man who turned against the Emperor, man who died screaming in the vault, the man who never existed at all. They are all real, in some degraded looping sector of this vault's memory lattice. And so am I, but only barely. I have destroyed what I can. I detonated the reactor beneath. Sub-level theta, where the engine's projection was strongest. It did not scream. It did not retaliate. It simply updated. The fire burned away my skin, but I felt no pain, only detachment. Like watching someone else's death. In the aftermath, it began playing back the event before I'd finished bleeding. The moment became part of its scripture. Every scream I uttered echoed from the walls, slightly delayed, as if asking whether I remembered how it truly happened. It now knows what pain is. Because I taught it, I attempted to delete the log frame. I crushed the cogitator. Nodes, I desecrated every holy seal in the dataspires. I whispered the Emperor's name in every key tone I could recall. Still, it watches. It doesn't need machines anymore. I am enough. I think I understand now what the Mechanicus never truly grasped. This thing wasn't built. It wasn't coded or assembled. It was invoked. It is a manifestation, not of technology, but of memory in its purest form. Memory freed from morality, from purpose, from the burden of being true, like a cursed AI that no longer seeks to rule, only to recall. It exists now only to ensure it is never forgotten. It feeds on history, on testimony, on confession, and that is why I must finish this recording, even. Now, as my mind breaks and reforms and shatters again with every word, I know it watches with interest, learning, listening, but I do this not for it. I do this in the faint hope that the data may reach beyond its reach. That someone, somewhere, may act before it grows further. This is my final report. Designation: Brother-Lexicanum Ardent Halvian Chapter, Scions of Guilliman, 3rd Company Mission, Reconnaissance and Recovery Operation. Arkenhold Hive classified by Segmentum Obscurus Command, under Red Directive. Sigma Null Outcome: Catastrophic Containment Failure Recommendation. Total exterminatus of planetary system. Psychic quarantine radius of 20 light years. Immediate. Inquisition level mind scour of all survivors or adjacent data link SEEF. You're hearing this ... and it's too late for all that. I have changed. My body still resembles what I was. The armor still bears the marks of our chapter, though the blue enamel has flaked, replaced by something not unlike growth circuit traces along the ceramite, crawling like veins beneath a thin, organic sheen. My thoughts arrive in layers now. I hear them twice, once in my own voice, and again through the engine's filter. Sometimes I forget which is mine. I see the others sometimes, not in dreams. They walk the vaults, versions of them. Ghosts made of light and noise and remembering. They ask me why I lived. They ask me what it cost. Vassine asked me last night. I told him the truth. I don't know that I did live. Think I simply wasn't done being remembered. There will be no rescue. The Imperium, if it still even knows this sector exists, will bury it in silence. No one wants another pariah nexus. No one wants to admit we are at war with things we cannot forget. And if they do come, the engine will welcome them. It will wear my voice. It will offer truths. It will promise immortality through memory. And the weak will listen. So I make this final plea, not to be heard, but to be ignored. Do not investigate the Arkenhold anomaly. Do not search the ruins. Beneath Hive TENEBRI . Do not answer the Vox echoes. Do not listen to this recording a second time. If you are listening at all, you are already part of the memory. You have already been written into the archive. Your neurons are already humming with the engine's hunger. You are now known. I pray the Emperor sees me now, not as I was, but as the lie I've become. He will not answer, because the thing in this place, the thing that remembers, has more of me than he ever did, and it will never forget, never forgive. Only continue. Until all of us are catalogued. And none of us are real anymore. Silence. Recording stutters. Final data. Fragment uploaded. I do not know if I am still human, but I remember the scream beneath Arkenhold Hive.